So as we consider the four last things, we come to the subject of hell. One of the things that has really captured the imagination of artists is hell. In paintings, the great masters have had a go at it, portraying weeping and gnashing of teeth, eternal punishment. So have writers. It'd be hard to talk about hell and not to mention Dante's Divine Comedy, and especially the first part, Inferno, with its circles of hell and diabolical punishments. But how can we rescue hell from its hellish image and discover something more to what the teaching on hell might be telling us? At first glance, hell is the place of the great comeuppance. It's the place where we would like to think the worst of the worst end up in boiling vats of oil, stirred by demons, with hot iron pokers being used for indescribable punishments. In that account, hell mirrors the worst that human beings can do to other human beings, inflicting pain and anguish. And since the Nazi Holocaust, to which we might add Roman crucifixion, the Spanish Inquisition, the transatlantic slave trade, Stalin's gulags, all too many examples, we've glimpsed the very worst of humanity and its violent, punishing excesses. And it is because we see our worst selves in hell that anyone who regards themselves as slightest bit humane recoils from that traditional image. Different questions arise in relation to hell. So let's consider this first question. Could God actually consign people to hell and eternal punishment? God's created in us the capacity to use our minds and our bodies to make decisions. At the liturgy of baptism, there is the place of decision. Do you turn to Christ? Some choose to follow Christ and some don't. Just as in his earthly life, when Christ walked on this world, some turned to Christ and many did not. That's true today. And that decision we normally term free will. It was free will that enabled Eve, at the behest of the serpent and unchallenged by the man, to say no to God and eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In the face of that gift of decision, our yes or our no, it is the loving and merciful act of God to allow people to decide to turn away from him. God willing, at the moment of death, when the individual comes to make a decision, or indeed, as traditionally is taught, has an opportunity beyond their death to amend, what is classically thought of as purgatory, we pray that their will is turned, that if it's a no, it becomes a yes to God, but not to allow for the possibility of an ultimate decision against God is unjust and unmerciful. That takes us to a second question that people ask. In the Creed, the Apostles' Creed, that we often say at Evensong, it says that Jesus descended into hell. What does that mean? Well, it does indeed say that. And it's a reference to what has become known as the harrowing of hell. The second letter of Peter speaks of Christ after his death on the cross, descending into hell, into Hades, the place that is absent of God, and he preaches to the souls kept there. It's illustrated in icons of the resurrection. You see Christ straddling two doors, which are the gates of hell, and he's stretching out his hands, picking up a woman and a man, Adam and Eve. He's raising up, pulling out of nothingness our first ancestors, old humanity, now being raised with Christ and transformed. That image implies that hell exists, that people have dwelt there. But as one theologian suggests, it's now empty. Christ has been down and scooped people out. That raises a third question. Just suggested that hell exists, but it might be empty. Isn't that rather pointless? What about Hitler? We have to hold on to the possibility of hell. First, there's scriptural warrant for saying that there is a place where we are forever isolated from God. And as already suggested, that is the logic of our free will. But God operates another logic, the logic of love and mercy. And we believe that love and mercy is so compelling that nobody would be able to resist it. They would, of course, turn back in penitence and faith, back to the loving heart of God. In a place of radical forgiveness, then even the most wicked people might even be delivered and saved from hell. It is curious that even the most humane, tolerant people are prepared to see some, such as Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot and such like, consigned to a place where there is no possibility of redemption. That also says that for some, they might as well not bother repenting or amending their lives before they die, because there's no hope for them anyway. And that takes us to another question. Can finite sin, earthbound sin, merit infinite punishment? In other words, sins, what I do wrong, however grave, take place at a particular time, in a particular place. And if punishment in hell is infinite, surely the punishment outweighs the transgression. That question takes us back again to God's mercy, and also back to our capacity to resist the overwhelming mercy of God. The question also assumes that sins are misdemeanors, when, as we have explored, hell is a place of the thoroughgoing rejection of God, a rejection any one of us can make, even if we're not bad people doing bad things. Sin is more overarching than that. Sin bubbles up in sins. It seems that people are very selective about hell. They can't imagine it for themselves, or those they basically deem good, but they can imagine it for people they deem to be pure evil. But that actually usurps the judgment of God, let alone God's mercy. I also wonder if people have stopped believing in hell, but have a working belief in purgatory. That is to say, purgatory as a place of purgation, an amendment, a place where you can change your mind, or your soul can be prayed for to get you out of there, as if you haven't already had a chance to do that in your life, here and now. So to conclude, can we be faithful to the tradition of what hell is and also reimagine it in some way? I believe we can. For too long, hell has been presented only as a threat. Perhaps now, to an Enlightenment mind, we need to present it as a viable option. Hell has been trivialised by the idea that it's an accumulation of bad deeds, rather than the far more fundamental rejection of God. Rather than pursuing the line that if you're bad, you'll go to hell and suffer the pains of hell, we need to be clear that going to hell is not about punishment for doing naughty things or those naughty but nice moments, but a deep-seated rejection of God that's lived out in our lives, in our words and our deeds. A lot of heat gets generated around hell. Please excuse that pun. But perhaps we could also think of hell in a different way. What if hell isn't a place of flames and fire, but is a place of cold, frozen existence? Not one writhing around in pain, but deep, isolated existence. If hell can be defined as the place where one is totally shut off from God, that really is the coldest of existences. It is the place where we have a heart of stone and not a heart of flesh. No warmth, no humanity, no love, no beauty, no God. Belief in hell is a statement of the limitless love of God, even though for those who reject God. More than that, those who shut themselves off from God, they're not annihilated. For God is a God of mercy and compassion, slow to anger and abounding in love.